Well, it's time now for a look at today's newspapers from around the world with our press reviewer, Florence Vimino. Hello, Florence.
Hi, how are you doing?
Okay, so top story in the French press is, of course, that shooting in Toulouse, but that's getting a lot of attention elsewhere as well.
It sure is, and we're going to start by looking at the International Herald Tribune. It's on the front page there. Toulouse standoff ends with questions. So we were looking at the French press review this morning and saw that it's mesmerized the whole of the country, and it's also raised unsettling questions about potential lapses in the domestic intelligence service. These questions are also being raised in the international press. Also, the crisis has shifted the focus of the presidential campaign here in France from the economy to security issues, and it's put President Nicolas Sarkozy in the spotlight.
Okay, well, moving to The Guardian as well, many international papers are actually applauding the way that Nicolas Sarkozy's handled this.
Absolutely. It's rather surprising for The Guardian, which tends to be rather left-leaning, to be supporting Nicolas Sarkozy. But they say that Nicolas Sarkozy reacted properly to the week's terrible events. He condemned any attempt to denigrate the French Muslim community by associating it with these, what they call mad crimes of terrorists. And it says that though in previous weeks Nicolas Sarkozy has been flirting with the far right, in time of need, Sarkozy can find the right words. And in the Wall Street Journal as well, conservative paper this time, they also say that the reaction of the French across the political spectrum has been commendable. Now, the Wall Street Journal says that though intelligence agencies in France have been criticized about letting the suspect slip through their net, according to the Wall Street Journal, every free society is vulnerable and at risk for an attack of a lone wolf, as people have been calling him. The Wall Street Journal is actually very admirative of France's, what they call its impressive surveillance apparatus. And according to the Wall Street Journal, nobody should feel sorry for the fate of Mohamed Merah. It says that he wanted to die gun in hand, and he got exactly what he wanted. And the Wall Street Journal says that French politicians shouldn't be afraid to call a spade a spade. A lot of French politicians were a little, they didn't want to call him a jihadist at first because they didn't want to stigmatize France's Muslim community. But the Wall Street Journal says that he was a jihadist and that French politicians shouldn't be afraid to call him that.
Okay, well, staying with UK papers, The Independent also has been looking at this story, and they've been exploring what the crisis means for France's Muslim community.
Yes, it's an interesting piece by a journalist called Nabila Ramdani. She's a French-born journalist of Algerian descent, and she says that for French Muslims, this horror only makes matters worse. She says that Muslims have been increasingly caricatured and demonized in recent years in France, as Nicolas Sarkozy's government has been lurching determinedly toward the right. For instance, Interior Minister Claude Guéant last year said that the growing number of Muslims in France was a problem. Now, there's a growing implication, according to this article, that ordinary Muslims are not only antisocial and undesirable, but directly linked to global terrorism. And so this journalist points out that this situation is just going to become worse because of the events that played out in Toulouse. And there's another interesting article in The Independent by Adrian Hamilton that's even harsher, goes even further. It says that France is a deeply racist country, and Toulouse will only make matters worse. Now, it's interesting to note that the Guardian was applauding Nicolas Sarkozy. Adrian Hamilton is very critical of Sarkozy. He says that he's been fiercely opposed to immigration, to multiculturalism, and it says that though Sarkozy has been calling for national unity, France remains this very deeply racist country. According to this article, the French people have transferred their resentment away from Jewish communities to Muslim communities, and this has only been made worse by rising unemployment and slowing growth. According to this article, Nicolas Sarkozy does have the opportunity to change things, to bring the nation together, but he says, and I quote, "One can't see him doing it. The temptation of electioneering are just too great."
It is, of course, an election year here in France, very important. Moving on to another story, international papers also reacting to events in Mali, those troops who've ousted President Touré in a coup on Thursday.
Yes, there's an interesting piece in Jeune Afrique that kind of sums things up. It's a very factual article, but it does give a clear overview overview of the situation as it is now, starting with the capital, Bamako, where there's an uneasy calm. Soldiers looted the presidential palace. It's unclear, as we were talking about earlier, where the president actually is. He has yet to give a statement. And the article points out that there's been widespread condemnation of the coup, starting with the UN. It says that it's a harsh blow to one of the very few well-established democracies in the very volatile Saharan region.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Florence Vimino, for that look at today's international papers.